Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the House Local Government Committee to order. We are having some technical difficulties with the screen, and we know that one member will be joining us virtually, and Vinnie Canizaro, who helped in the drafting of the spreadsheet that was handed out to you regarding the distribution of funds under my tax-exempt property bill, is going to make a brief overview of his process to just bring you up to speed on how we derived at the spreadsheet that we now have. So we might want to move on to our second bill first and then return to 985 after we finish with that one. If we can, let's start with the call to order. Oh, I'm sorry, the roll call.
Chairman Freeman.
Here.
Representatives Borowski. Here. Donahue.
Designation?
Fleming.
Designation with appearance by virtual at some point.
Haddock. Here. Hambidge.
Designation?
Kazim.
Designation?
Madsen.
Designation?
Monroe.
Designation?
Probst. Here. Prokopiak. Here. Salisbury. Here. Sappy. Here. Smith-Waddell.
Designation?
Chairman Miller.
Here.
Representatives Banta. Here. Cooper. Here. Fink. Here. Jones.
Here.
Kozak.
By designation.
Kuzma. Reichard.
By designation.
Rincabbage.
By designation.
Wattrow. Weakneck. Here. Wentling. We have a quorum.
Okay, a quorum being present, we can continue with our business. First order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. If we'd all stand, I'd ask, we've also been joined by Representative Kuzma. Please add his name to the roll. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, I'm asking Chairman Miller to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Chairman Miller. Before we get into our legislation today, I did want to recognize a intern that's working in our office, Galen Kilfeather. She's a native of Springfield Township in Montgomery County and is attending Connecticut College, majoring in government and East Asian studies, and is a member of the women's varsity ice hockey team, which is an amazing team. Participating in the House Legislative Fellowship Program for the summer, she's been assigned to our committee, and we welcome her. Galen, do you want to rise just to be recognized? Thank you. She's proving to be an outstanding intern, too, so we're glad to have her in the office. The first order of business is my legislation to establish a tax-exempt municipal assistance fund, House Bill 985. We are trying to get the technical difficulties worked out with the screen because Vinnie Canizaro, who did the spreadsheet, is going to give an overview. So what we will do is temporarily jump over my bill and move on to Representative Siegel's bill, House Bill 1446. The chair brings up or calls up House Bill 1446. John, did you want to read a summary?
Okay, House Bill 1446, sponsored by Representative Siegel, would establish the Economic Development and Mixed-Use Redevelopment of Shopping Malls Act with the purpose of incentivizing the redevelopment of such entities and return them to function with sound and approved plans for their redevelopment. Under the legislation, the Economic Development and Mixed-Use Redevelopment Advisory Committee would be created within the State Planning Board to provide guidance to municipal corporations in redeveloping shopping malls into affordable housing and other mixed-use purposes for the benefit of the community. And they would be charged with developing best practices guidelines for the redevelopment of shopping malls based on national standards and models. And they would be required to publish guidelines and on the DCD's publicly accessible website within 6 months of the effective date of the act. And under the bill, local taxing authorities would be authorized to provide special tax provisions related to an increase in the value of real estate attributable to the mixed-use redevelopment of the property, and the governing body would have to approve any tax exemptions through the adoption of an ordinance or resolution. And it says, further, the taxing authority would be able to provide for an exemption on the assessment attributable to the actual cost of the mixed-use redevelopment construction or up to a maximum cost uniformly established by the taxing authority. And the actual amount of taxes exempted from must be in accordance with one of the following schedules: For the first 10 years, 100% of the eligible assessment shall be exempt. And then if at least one criterion is met to the satisfaction of and completed by the date established by the taxing authority, 100% of the eligible assessment shall be exempted for an additional 2 years, total of 12 years. And then if at least two criterion are met to the satisfaction of and completed by the date established by the taxing authority, 100% of the eligible assessment shall be exempt for an additional 5 years, so a total of 15 years.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the maker of the bill. We can get into some of that later. This amendment, I think, is also well-intended, but there are some problems I have with the amendment, particularly when it comes to the concept of the definition of underutilized. The bill does, this amendment does make an attempt to define that, but there's no formal process in the amendment or the bill that would establish how the term underutilized is actually determined. That's one problem I have. The other problem I have with the amendment has to do with the concept that the definition of underutilized actually is almost akin to the idea of using the definition to explain itself. Something doesn't work here for me, particularly gray field. Underutilized means a brownfield, gray field, or a shopping mall. Well, what if a shopping mall is fully established and fully running? It is not underutilized, or is it? What exactly is underutilized? Could a building that is fully functioning be determined by the authority to say, well, we don't like that particular business, we think it's underutilized? I think there's a lot of questions in that, and because of that, at this point, I'm recommending a no vote. Thank you.
Just to note, there is actually definitions in the amendment and the bill regarding what a underutilized property is, referring to ground fields, giving a definition, brownfields, and I believe shopping centers in terms of what is intended. And I think there's also just a logical way of assessing a piece of property in a community. If it's an abandoned mall, it's underutilized. But I think that's kind of self-evident on its face, just to put a point out. Okay, any other comments before we move on to a vote on the amendment? Did you want a roll call?
Please.
Okay. We will take a roll call on Amendment A01184.
Chairman Freeman.
Yes.
Representatives Borowski. Yes. Donahue. Yes. Fleming.
Designation yes?
Haddock. Yes. Hambidge.
Designation yes?
Kazim.
Designation yes?
Madsen.
Designation yes?
Monroe.
Designation yes?
Probst.
Yes.
Prokopiak. Yes. Salisbury.
Yes.
Sappy. Yes. Smith Waddell.
Designation yes.
Chairman Miller.
No.
Representatives Banta. No. Cooper. Fink. Jones.
No.
Kozak.
No by designation.
Kuzma. Reichard.
No by designation.
Rincabbage.
No by designation.
Watro. Weakneck. No. Wentling. $15.11.
The vote is 15-11, so the amendment is inserted. The question reoccurs, shall the committee report House Bill 1446 to the floor for consideration? Is there any further discussion or debate regarding the bill in chief? Oh, Chairman Miller, sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to say, as I started the last time, I appreciate the intent, because many municipalities, as was referenced here with the comments earlier about brownfields and others, there are properties in our municipalities that would benefit from redevelopment. And so I think it is incumbent upon us to look at ways to try to find opportunities to advance those for the benefit of our community. However, there are a number of issues, I think for time's sake, because we got a late start here, I'm going to withhold some of my comments, but one of the largest comments that I have in relation to this is the provision here that requires PLAs, project labor agreements, which that is a problem that I think excludes 90% of the construction workforce and really focuses in on one particular group to the establishment of the different parameters that go to make up the provisions that go into these redevelopment options. I find that troubling. I think that the non-unionized construction workers out there should not be excluded from this bill. And for that reason, among others, I'm urging a no vote. Hopefully that could be fixed and we can address some of the other issues in the bill, but for this at this point, I'm recommending a no vote because of that.
Representative Siegel, did you have a comment?
Just briefly, I appreciate the good minority chairman's comments. Just to clarify, the PLA provision is optional, is at the discretion of each local taxing jurisdiction as if they wish to make that a requirement for the extension of the tax abatement schedule. I would add that the first 10 years are abated with no strings attached. The ability to extend it to 2 and then additional 3 for a total of 15 years would require could potentially require the signing of a project labor agreement on that respective project, but it does not have to. It simply allows local governments and the power of their own local control and their own local decision-making apparatus to choose for themselves if that is a provision they'd like to install. Some communities, I like to believe my own, like Allentown, would probably require that provision or would like to because we believe there's a value in using union labor, and the research behind project labor agreements is quite conclusive that they deliver projects on time, on budget, with the best possible results. So I think it's a worthwhile stipulation and a good provision within the confines of the legislation, but I would add it is entirely optional, and it is by no means mandatory for the extension of the tax abatement. A community could just as well ask for the installation of trails, parks, and green space in return for an extended exemption, or attainable housing, and forego the project labor agreement if they choose that as the path forward, because they believe that's in the best interest of their community and what their constituents and their residents want. So I just want to make sure everybody's under the understanding it's optional. Nothing here is mandatory.
Chair, thank you for that explanation. Any further comment regarding the bill? Okay, the bill is before us. A motion has been properly made. I guess we'll take a roll call. A roll call, please.
Chairman Freeman.
Yes.
Representatives Borowski. Yes. Donahue. Yes. Fleming.
Designation, yes.
Haddock. Yes. Hambidge.
Yes. Designation.
Kazim.
Designation, yes.
Madsen.
Designation, yes.
Monroe.
Designation, yes.
Probst.
Oh, yes.
Prokopiak. Yes. Salisbury. Yes. Sappy. Yes. Smith-Waddell.
Designation, yes.
Chairman Miller.
No.
Representatives Banta. No. Cooper. No. Fink. Jones.
No.
Kozak.
By designation, no.
Kuzma. Reichard.
By designation, no.
Rincabbage.
By designation, no.
Wattrow. Weakneck.
No.
Wentling. 1511.
I'm sorry, what was the
1511.
votes? 1511. The bill will be reported to the House for consideration. Congratulations. I would like to move on to the tax exempt bill, but I think we're still having technical difficulties trying to get Vinny on the screen. What are the prospects of that happening soon? Still working on it. Okay. In the meantime, we'll move on to the other bills on our agenda, and hopefully we'll have enough time for the tax exempt bill. Moving on to House Bill 1584, Representative Greiner's bill, or Chairman Greiner's bill. Let's see. I'll call up that bill. Is there a motion to report the bill? So moved by Representative Sappy. And call upon Kyle for a brief overview of the legislation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 1584, Chairman Greiner amends the agricultural area security law to allow the following: the subdivision and transfer of less than 10 acres of preserved farmland to contiguous preserved farm owners, and the preservation of less than 10 acres of farmland to be added to already preserved farmland. The bill further prevents the clean and green rollback tax penalties for subdivisions that meet the criteria found under the bill. Just as some background, situations arise from time to time where owners of contiguous preserved farmland have reason to transfer ownership of a small tract of land to the neighboring landowner. Further, there are situations where a preserved farm owner has the opportunity to purchase a few acres and wishes to add it to already preserved farmland. Currently in law, there is a general limitation that the subdivision of preserved farmland cannot take place if the subdivision results in the creation of a parcel of less than 10 acres. The administration is supportive of the legislation. CCAP did not take a formal position, but does have some concerns that this bill would create a backlog in the applications for the preservation of farmland, and the bill takes effect in 30 days.
Thank you for that explanation. Is there any comment by the members or questions? Oh, Representative Haddock.
And the reason for the original 10 acres or less was because a lot of these properties and parcels were being built on for housing, and a lot of times for children of the farm owner. Does this protect, and I'm assuming, but I don't like to assume, the 10 acres would still have a provision if they were included that it could not be built upon to get the tax break?
I believe that is still provision, yes.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Oh, Representative Sappi.
I think this could be really helpful throughout the Commonwealth. I know in our area in southern Chester County, so many of our farms are small family farms, and when they go, they're gone forever, obviously, and we really would be creating a lot of farm and food deserts by not trying to preserve more ag land. So I fully support this.
As well as protecting your open space, yeah, as well. Chairman Miller.
I'd just like to piggyback on those comments. Yeah, this bill is a good bill. It adds flexibility, and it doesn't affect, as was mentioned, the 10-acre limitations. The other thing I would add is sometimes the monies that are available in the county to preserve these various farms, if there's just a little bit left, that could be applied to some of these smaller parcels. So there's no limitation or, I think, hindrance by adopting this bill. I think it's a good bill, will help our open space, our farming community, and I'd urge a yes vote. Thanks.
Okay. Oh, Representative Salisbury.
I just wanted to ask what is defined, or how is a crop unique to the area defined? Is that defined somewhere? I'm just curious. It describes, it doesn't need to meet the same acreage requirement if it's utilized for a crop unique to the area. I just didn't know if that's defined elsewhere in the law, and I wasn't familiar with it.
Mr. Chairman, can I bring up the Ag Executive Director from our side, Carrie Golden, please?
Oh, I'm looking at the bill, that's existing law. So this bill doesn't actually change that. Yeah. Yeah, it's defined in the Act. Any other questions? Okay. That being said, do you want a roll call? Okay. All those in favor of reporting the bill to the floor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the bill will be reported to the floor for consideration. I'm getting a signal from Christina that we're probably ready to hear from Vinny. Yes. I want to call up House Bill 985 for consideration and ask John to give a brief overview of the legislation.
Okay, House Bill 985 is Chairman Freeman's legislation. It establishes the Tax-Exempt Property Municipal Assistance Act to provide financial assistance to eligible municipalities for the tax-exempt real property located within the municipality. And it would utilize the tax revenue generated by the liquor tax imposed pursuant to Act 4 of 1936, first special session, and referred to as the Johnstown Flood Tax. It would establish the Tax-Exempt Property Municipal Assistance Fund, which would be established within the State Treasury as a special restricted account to be used exclusively for the purpose of making annual revenue distributions pursuant to the Act. A municipality would be eligible for assistance if it met the following criteria. 1, its total assessed value of tax-exempt property equals or exceeds 15% of the total value of assessed property within the municipality. Or 2, the household income of the municipality is within 115% of the statewide median household income, according to the U.S. Census Bureau's American Community Survey one-year estimate. Under the legislation, DCD shall determine annual sharing of the funds in accordance with the following. 1, each municipality's total market value of qualified tax-exempt property shall be divided by the total market value of qualified tax-exempt property in all eligible municipalities, with the quotient expressed as a percentage. And then secondly, that percentage shall be multiplied by the funds available for distribution to determine the amount of funding for each eligible municipality. and assistance would be subject to the following limitations. 1, no municipality shall be permitted to receive more than 10% of the total funds available for distribution. 2, no municipality shall receive an amount exceeding $100 per person based upon the population during the last decennial census. And 3, the amount of any in lieu of tax payments received shall be deducted from the final payment under the Act and returned to the department and deposited into the fund for disbursement in future years. And finally, within 180 days of the effective date of the Act, the department would be required to develop written guidelines necessary to implement the Act.
Oh, yeah, motion to report the bill. At this point, I just want to make a brief comment about the intent behind the bill, and then we'll go on to the amendment. I think it's probably best to have our discussion on the amendment since it does make significant changes to the subject matter of the bill. This legislation's been a long time coming. I think I first introduced legislation to compensate communities with high tax exempt properties back in 2007. And the bill has been reported, I believe, at least 3 times out of the committee over the course of that time. I think what we have before us today with the inclusion of the amendment that we'll be taking up shortly vastly improves the bill and ensures that under the formula that's envisioned in the amendment, it'll drive the grant money out to those communities that are most needy, keeping in place the threshold of 15% tax exempt or more to participate in the program, but also putting into place in the amendment, which we'll get to shortly, a tiered process on the capping, which will allow more monies to be driven to communities of lesser means by being able to do that in communities where the household median income is 85% of the statewide household median income, getting to the communities that have real need. And then by having the tiered effect that we will talk about in the amendment, you're driving it into the communities that need it, who have a high percent of tax exempt. And I want to thank Representative Probst for bringing that issue up at our last meeting, as she pointed out the discrepancies that existed for East Stroudsburg, which has 71% tax exempt. So with that being said, I'd like us to move on to the amendment unless there's any questions on the bill in chief now, but the amendment pretty much is the bill, so. Okay, I would then make a motion to bring up the amendment, which is Amendment A01300. John, do you want to give a brief overview before we turn the floor over to Vinnie?
Yeah. Amendment A01300, offered by Chairman Freeman. As mentioned, it would revise the funding formula, specifically the per-person ratio for maximum grant awards would be changed from the current $100 per person to a tiered system as follows. If a municipality's median household income is greater than 85% of the state median household income, the maximum grant would be limited to $100 per resident. Then, per resident, right?
At 15 to 25%, right?
Yeah. Then if a municipality's median household income is less than 85% of the state median household income, the following would apply. If the tax exempt rate is between 15 and 25%, the maximum limit would be $100 per person. If it's between 25 and 50%, the maximum cap would be $125 per person, per resident. If it's between 50 and 60%, the maximum cap would be $150 per resident. If the tax exempt rate is between 60 and 70%, the maximum rate would be $175 per resident. And finally, if it's above 70% tax exempt status, the maximum rate would be $200 per resident. Further, a municipality with a tax exempt percentage rate of at least 15%, but which is a county seat, would be exempt from the median household income requirements. Also, DCD would be required to, it adds provisions for DCD to recalculate the funding formula after the initial calculations are made if more than $1 million is remaining in the fund. Further, it would it provides for them to keep recalculating in the same manner provided for in the bill until there is either less than $1 million remaining in the fund or there are no remaining municipalities that have yet to meet their grant allocation limitations. The amendment would also stipulate that a municipality that receives from a Commonwealth budget appropriation for fire protection or on Commonwealth property or emergency medical services for individuals on Commonwealth property would be exempt from the deduction requirement of the Act. And finally, it makes editorial changes.
If there's no objection, before we take up any comments or questions regarding the amendment, I would like to turn to Vinnie Cannizzaro, who has been extremely helpful to the committee in the work on this amendment. He has put in lots of time on putting together the spreadsheets that reflect the language of the amendment. He's done yeoman's work, and I thank him for all his contribution to the committee and the work of this bill. Vinnie, did you want to give any comments regarding your work and before we take up the amendment in chief?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just make a few quick comments. As the language is written right now, based on the population thresholds, we go through 3 reallocations of the money. And what I think is probably the key part to remember is that as municipalities meet their threshold, either because of the maximum of 10% or based on the population max, the difference goes back into a new pot of money that is then redistributed to the municipalities. We've been through a lot of different iterations of this, and I think this is probably the one that provides the most equitable distribution of the available funds. I'm happy to take any questions, but I'll leave it there for now.
Are there any questions of any by the members of the committee at this point? Okay, if not, thank you, Vinnie, and please feel free to stay tuned as we move on the amendment. And if you have any points to make on that, that would be welcomed as well. That makes us has us return to the amendment which is before us. Are there any questions regarding the amendment and its provisions? Oh, Chairman Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and for offering this amendment. I have the major problem with this amendment is that it doesn't apply to all citizens of the Commonwealth. The amendment goes through various changes to try to change the formula which is outlined through the bill, but the main concern I have is it doesn't apply to all citizens of the Commonwealth. The other thing is it allows for double dipping for municipalities that receive EMS or fire funds from the Commonwealth. And so I'm just not sure that this is the way to go about it, and for those reasons, primarily because it's not benefiting all of our citizens of the Commonwealth, that I would urge a no vote. Thank you.
Thank the gentleman for his comments. Representative Haddock, you had a point to make? Or, oh, I'm sorry, Representative Probst, you were to be recognized first.
Oh, that's okay. So I appreciate the Chairman Miller's comments, but what these fire companies and EMS get, especially voluntary, is nothing in the scheme of things. These boroughs and municipalities are still paying so much to keep them afloat. So that should be, in my opinion, neither here nor there. And it does help every citizen in the Commonwealth because we all have maybe it's not our district, but in our county, where these municipalities are going to benefit. You know they're landlocked. You know eminent domain is a problem. And there's no other way but to raise taxes. When I spoke to my municipalities that are going to benefit from this, they literally said, this can help us lower the taxes. You got number 1 line items being police, number 2, public works. I mean, I don't know. I know how my borough is, and I know where I was born and raised in East Stroudsburg, with 71% being tax exempt. The property taxes are off the charts, and it's not because they're greedy, it's because they have requirements and duties to their citizens. So to say that it's not going to help everybody in the Commonwealth, well, it's going to help a lot, and it's going to help most. And I really appreciate this bill and the time you took on it. And I'm begging everybody for a yes vote on this. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Representative Haddock, you had a point?
Yeah, I just think it's amazing that here in the comment, and I realize a state representative is supposed to take care of their home district first, but we're also statewide officials. And we just voted on a bill for farmland preservation that you had to own a farm to have the contiguous property. And that didn't apply to everybody in Pennsylvania. But we just passed that unanimously because it was good for the overall of Pennsylvania's economy and environment. And to say that this bill doesn't benefit every Pennsylvania, so that's the cop-out, we're not voting for it, or this amendment, I just think is just short-sighted. Thank you.
Representative Salzberg.
I would echo the words of Representative Haddock. You know, I would be hard-pressed to find a cow in District 34 in Allegheny County. I've not seen any walking down the street in Braddock Borough, but we do regularly have matters that come before the legislature related to milk and farm and agriculture and things of that nature. So, you know, those of us who do represent communities that would be benefited by this would appreciate the attention of those who perhaps their communities are not reflected in the packet of grant amounts that you've so helpfully provided to us. I see that in several of my communities, we have essentially between 5 and 6 figure sums that would be awarded to some of the lowest income communities in Allegheny County and probably some of the lowest income communities in the state. These are communities that have a high percentage of tax exempt properties because of high home abandonment. They've been taken over by land banks, by COGS, by various other entities, and then we have many abandoned churches, for example, that have been held by the diocese for decades. Braddock Borough, where my district office is, has a population of about 1,700 people. It will never again see the 20,000 population that it once had when the steel mills were booming, and many people came there to live, to be within walking distance of their employer. So I think that we have to recognize that some people do have communities that have between 50 and 90% vacancy rate, and that those properties are never going to be taken over by a profitable use ever again. No one is going to come in and take over homes that have been abandoned since I was born in 1982 that have a tree growing through the roof. So I think that we have to understand that it is incumbent upon us as legislators, just as although I lack cows, I get the same vote as everyone else on milk policy. I would greatly appreciate the support for this bill that may come from people who are in districts that may not see a benefit from it because they see how important it is to other municipalities in the Commonwealth. Thank you.
I thank the lady for her comments. Just as a couple of points in relation to Chairman Miller's thoughts, we have various programs in the state that don't apply to all citizens. Many are driven by need and what's needed within that community to shore it up and make sure it's successful. One of the things I learned a long time ago in working on this proposal back in 2007 is that we have communities that are failing. And in large part, they're not failing because they're mismanaged. They're not failing because there's corruption or anything at the local level. They're failing that because the percentage of properties in their community that are tax exempt is extremely high. I once took a look at all the municipalities that were on the Act 47 list. Not one of them was below 25% tax exempt. And there are others that were as high as 50, 60, even 70%. It's tough to provide the services to your community when you have such a truncated tax base to operate from. And while the institutions that are tax exempt that reside in those host municipalities, whether it be the county courthouse system, a not-for-profit hospital or university, they are regional assets and we all want them to succeed. But it's inherently unfair to say to the host municipality, sorry, you're stuck with them, and so you have to live with a limited tax base, which means that your local taxpayers are going to pay a higher tax rate than other communities because you have such a high percentage of tax-exempt properties. Another thing to be kept in mind, and this I think gets at the heart of the issue of not applying to all citizens in the Commonwealth. If we let our core municipalities fail, if they do not succeed, if they go bankrupt, or if they cannot provide services that are essential to maintain safety, to maintain public health and order, that's going to draw down a region. We're all part of a greater community. So if a Reading fails or a Lancaster fails, the surrounding communities are all going to fail as well over time, because that is the core community that is sort of the essential part of the county. This, in my opinion, will shore them up. We may very well see, if this becomes law, that there will be very few communities that actually fall into Act 47 status again because of the supplemental funding that will come from this fund. And that's a savings to the Commonwealth, because we spend millions of dollars in technical support to try and shore up Act 47 communities. This is going to try and make them whole again and make them succeed. And I think, I respect all the members of this committee, especially my counterpart chairman. I know he's very thoughtful in terms of his approach to legislation. But I sincerely believe this piece of legislation will go a long way to stabilizing communities who simply are not failing because of their own misdeeds. They're failing because they don't have the tax base anymore. And this is a way of reflecting, a way of getting revenue to them to compensate them for their high tax exempt communities or properties. To my mind, that achieves a great end on behalf of the community and behalf of the Commonwealth. So I would implore the members to please vote for this legislation. Let us get a chance to shore up these communities that have been failing because of high percentages of tax exempt and make them whole once again. Any others? Oh, I'm sorry. Representative Borowski had comments.
Oh, thank you, Chair Freeman. I don't want to belabor, I agree with everything that my colleagues who've spoken prior on this legislation have said. So I'm looking at, I represent communities in Delaware County, and we have 49 municipalities in Delaware County, and of which only 7 are listed on this chart of of municipalities that will benefit from this legislation. None of them are mine. But then I look down and I see, Johnsburg Borough, Jones Township, communities in Elk County who will benefit from this. And when I was elected, I realized, and I took very seriously that I was elected to not only represent my communities and certainly their interests, but to represent everyone across the Commonwealth. So when I look at this list, and it's a pretty hefty list of communities that will benefit from this legislation, even though mine are not included on it, I am certainly glad to support it because, like Chair Freeman stated, we are only as strong as the sum of our parts or something like that. So, so making all of our communities whole and the ability to be prosperous, to make sure that the residents are not overburdened with taxes, which we know is certainly a huge concern here in our communities. If we can do that for all of these communities, I am glad to step up and support this legislation. And I would just add, so this is my only my second session being here, and I sat on this committee last session, and I fully enjoyed this committee. And I come from local government. I was a commissioner and a school board member, and I love the work that we do here because I think it really does, it is impactful and it really does make a difference in our communities on a very specific targeted level. But, I feel like I've noticed of late, we aren't moving as a unit when it comes to that. And I felt we did last session on many pieces of legislation, and I realize there will be disagreements, but I feel like in this session, we are not moving as a unit, and that is disappointing to me. I am here to work for the entire Commonwealth, and I know that many of my colleagues are, and I hope that we can find a way back to the way of moving as a unit, because these are our municipalities, whether they are ours specifically. So I hope we can get back to that. So thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any other comments from the members? Chairman Miller.
Thank you. I just want to point out that in this bill, I believe I'm giving approximate numbers, so I would welcome any correction, but this bill will help about 900 municipalities, and about 1,600 municipalities across the Commonwealth would receive no benefit under this bill. And those are approximate numbers I believe are accurate. And so I think the bill could be drafted differently so that it was to the benefit of all municipalities. We each have municipalities that might benefit from this. There's no question about it. I just would like to offer that though we have disagreement, it doesn't mean a division necessarily. We have different ways we can identify a problem, but we might have a different way of trying to solve that problem. And so, for my part, I think there is a place for honest disagreement here. And for me, the 1,600 or so municipalities that would receive no benefit under this bill are or this bill ultimately, are worth bringing into the discussion. So with that, thank you.
I thank the gentleman, and I know we have to move quickly because we're getting close to session. Just a couple of quick points. Again, even though a community might not receive money under this proposal, it will be driven to the communities that are most in need. If we were to distribute it to everyone, it would dilute the pot of money in such a way that it would have no impact on shoring up the communities that are experiencing such a high degree of tax-exempt properties and that impact upon their stability. It would dilute the purpose of the bill, and it would not really achieve the goal of trying to make them whole, which I think we all benefit from. Again, there are programs that sometimes don't reach every corner of the Commonwealth. But if they reach those communities that are in need, if they make them better, if they stabilize them, we all benefit as a Commonwealth in the process. And again, if we can make sure that by providing this kind of funding, communities aren't going to slip into Act 47, that's going to be a savings, because Act 47 is not an inexpensive program for the state to operate. And sometimes, as good as it is, it doesn't really solve the problem of those communities. Once they leave Act 47, some of them slip back into it, because again, the revenue is not there. And the high degree of tax-exempt properties is really one of the culprits in undermining their stability. So I would urge the members to consider voting for this. I think it benefits. It's something that we can all be proud of at the end of the day, and I think it addresses a real need. So I thank everyone for their comments, and I agree with Chairman Miller. We can agree to disagree on issues, but I think one of the benefits of this committee is we've always been very bipartisan, so it's always good if we can find the road to that as well. With no further comment, I'd ask the Christina to vote on the amendment.
Chairman Freeman.
Yes.
Representatives Borowski. Yes. Donahue. Yes. Fleming.
Proxy or designation, yes.
Paddock. Yes. Hambidge.
Designation, yes.
Kazim.
Designation, yes.
Madsen.
Designation, yes.
Monroe.
Designation, yes.
Probst.
Yes.
Prokopiak. Yes. Salisbury. Yes. Sappy.
Designation, yes.
Smith Waddell.
Designation, yes.
Chairman Miller.
No.
Representatives Banta. No. Cooper. I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
By designation, no.
Fink. Jones.
No.
Kozak.
By designation, no.
Kuzma. Reichard.
By designation, no.
Rincabbage.
By designation, no.
Watro. Weakneck. Wentling. 1412.
The vote is 14-12. The amendment is inserted in the bill. We now will take up the bill in chief and report it to the House. A roll call vote, I think, is probably in order on that as well.
We have comment?
Oh, sure. We are kind of pressed for time, but Chairman Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll make this very brief. I have quite a few comments on the bill overall, but I'll just stick with this one in particular. This bill would put a $450 million hole in our budget, taking it out of the general fund and distributing out as per the formula laid out in this bill, with no monies being allocated to recover that hole in the budget. This is a serious problem that we're facing. Even the IFO talks about us having a structural deficit. We could get into that. A lot of discussions related to that, but that's a serious issue related to this bill. And for that and many other reasons, which I'll withhold of right now, I'll urge a no vote. Thank you.
I thank the gentleman. And just to speak to that point, I'm under no illusion that this will probably become part of the budget negotiations at this late state. But I think it's important to get the bill out because of its value to the communities that are affected. And it could conceivably become part of our budget negotiations next session. This will start a dialogue. This will get people thinking about the communities that are feeling because of high tax exempt properties, and that this can be a path to addressing that issue successfully. The fund would take the $460 million from the liquor tax. That's been a pretty steady revenue stream, so I think it's a steady revenue stream to offer to those tax-exempt communities. We still have a lot of moving pieces even in this budget. We don't know how the federal funding is going to come down. That's 40% of the state budget, and we have no idea what that's going to look like. There's obvious proposals to raise revenue. Whether they become law or not depends upon our sessions and negotiations. And of course, we have money in the rainy day fund that has not wanted to be touched, but that is a substantial fund to shore up our finances at some point, which who knows whether we'll consider using that or not. But all those considerations. I think the important thing is to get this out there, get them thinking about the possibilities of finally addressing this issue after so many years of failing communities, shoring them up and making a stronger Commonwealth in the process. With that, if there's no more comments, take a roll call on the
Chairman
bill.
Freeman.
Yes.
Representatives Borowski. Yes. Donahue. Yes. Fleming.
Designation yes.
Haddock. Yes. Hambidge.
Designation yes.
Kazim.
Designation yes.
Madsen.
Designation yes.
Monroe.
Designation yes.
Probst.
Yes.
Prokopiak.
Yes.
Salisbury.
Yes.
Sappy.
Designation yes.
Smith Waddell.
Designation yes.
Chairman Miller.
No.
Representatives Banta. No. Cooper.
By designation, no.
Fink. Jones.
Yeah.
Kozak.
By designation, no.
Kuzma. Reichard.
By designation, no.
Rinkavage.
By designation, no.
Wattrow. Weetnack. Wentling. 1412.
The vote is 14-12. The bill will be reported to the floor for consideration, and I thank the members for their thoughts and votes on the issue. We have one last bill before us. We've been told the speaker is holding the chair before we go into session, so we can finish up our agenda. That is House Bill 1651. It's a local government commission bill. I'm the prime sponsor, and I would ask that it be brought up for consideration, and I will make the motion to report it from committee. Before we get into it, we have Chris Ghazi here from the commission. If you'd like to give a brief overview of 1651, which, for the information of members, is identical to the same proposal we reported from committee last time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And we have seen similar proposals for the boroughs and some other forms of local government. So as you may well know, when a local government has a vacancy on its governing body, there is a process for filling that vacancy. Typically, the remaining members of the governing body fill the vacancy by majority vote. Where they are unable to, they form what's called a vacancy committee, which basically is just an additional member that was pre-selected in order to sit with the remaining members of the governing body in order to fill the vacancy. And if they are still not able to fill the vacancy, then the vacancy can be filled by the county Court of Common Pleas. This builds on that existing process to essentially recognize that there are times when those time periods that are open, 30 days for the initial opportunity to fill, 15 additional days with the special committee, just will not move forward in those time periods. And when a governing body realizes that it has deadlock, it can move forward to the next step. Or if it will be unable to fill the vacancy because of multiple vacancies, they can accelerate by majority vote directly to going to the Court of Common Pleas. So this is just an intention intended to simplify, streamline, and accelerate the process of filling vacancies in a pretty common sense way, we believe. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Mr. Ghazi? Seeing none, then I guess we'll take a vote on reporting the bill. We've properly made the motion, so we're in order. Voice vote okay?
We're all okay.
Okay. Those in favor of reporting the bill as it is, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any negative votes? It'll be reported unanimously for the House for consideration. I thank the members for their attendance today and for their involvement in the issues we dealt with. This committee stands adjourned.